Good afternoon. My name is Craig Weller. I'm a former special operator and the co-owner of Building the Elite. At BTE, we train people for soft selection courses around the world, and we have a very high success rate. For instance, in 15 years, I've never had a one-on-one client not get selected at the Army's SFAS course. We've written a 548-page textbook about how we do this, which is what you see here. Soft selection requires high performance in three domains: mental, physical, and emotional. These domains are interconnected. The more physically fit you are, the better your cognitive function and the lower your emotional stress from negative performance evaluations. The better you can emotionally regulate, the better you can think, and the better you can manage your stress response to the benefit of your physical performance. And the better you can utilize mental skills, the better you can manage stressful challenges, regulate your physiology, engage in introspection, and learn and adapt. All of these things matter and they all work together. You can't truly separate any of them. We're not going to elaborate on how to be good at running fast and carrying heavy things around, but basic physical fitness is obviously a key part of success in any selection course. It's also overrated as an isolated variable because highly physically fit people without the right mental and emotional tools fail or quit in selection courses all the time. People who perform well in selection courses have a particular pattern of autonomic function and a signature type of stress response, sometimes called the warfighter stress response. More resilient people have a more robust yet selective stress response with higher variability. They're able to ramp up a strong stress response through things like cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, and then once the stressor is passed, they rapidly drop to a restful baseline. If we look at their cortisol levels over the course of a day, they'll have a big spike in the morning that mostly tapers off over the day and then bottoms out at night during sleep. When they're engaging a stressor, more resilient people's stress response is more like a light switch, all the way on and then all the way off. This pattern of robust engagement followed by rapid, deep recovery is crucial in a selection course as the days and weeks grind on, and it's one of the key variables that we're going to be talking about today. Less resilient people, or those struggling with burnout, have a flattened cortisol response. Their stress patterns are more like a dimmer switch stuck in the middle of the range. They're never always on, but they're never fully off. They don't activate as well in the morning, and then their cortisol levels stay more elevated during the day and at rest, and at night when they should be sleeping. Soft selection also filters for mental characteristics. Some of this is rooted in baseline intelligence. For instance, on average, a successful soft candidate has an IQ of around 115 to 120. However, performance in a selection environment is based on one's ability to retain cognitive function under extreme stress. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you can't utilize that intelligence in a given setting. Maintaining cognitive function under stress is supported by specific mental skills like segmenting, compartmentalization, and the management of self-talk. These are ways of managing attentional focus, regulating the stress response, and ensuring sufficient cognitive bandwidth to perform challenging tasks like navigation, running comm systems, or scenario-based problem solving. Anything that detracts from mental bandwidth by increasing baseline stress, reducing working memory, or adding distractions and additional cognitive load during a task will reduce cognitive function, making less of your intellectual capacity available. At BTE, we've been working on the physical and mental side of this for over 15 years. We can reliably get anyone with the right raw material into the physical condition they'll need to succeed in soft selection with enough training time. And we've been working on the mental side of that throughout that time. But it's only been in the past few years that we've begun to fully understand and control for the emotional aspects of resilience and performance in these courses. It's rare that our one-on-one clients don't make it through a selection course, but when it's happened, it's never been due to a physical failure. It was almost always for a reason rooted in emotion. Essentially, they'd conclude that either I don't belong here, or other people don't think I belong here, and I believe them. We had a client once who was physically performing in the top 10% of his class. He was actually ranked top 2 when we found out that he left, in one of the toughest courses in the world, who still decided that he didn't deserve to be there and quit a few days before it was over. This is the product of an emotional shortfall. Anyone who's been through a soft selection course will have seen this phenomenon at work. Physically fit people with the mental skills to drive themselves through incredibly hard events, but who ultimately decide that they should quit anyway because it just wasn't for me. Since we've begun to address emotional intelligence and regulation as part of the training process, we've seen an improvement in our success rate. We've had far fewer physically fit people surprise us by quitting because they didn't feel like they belonged. This effect is true for anyone in a SOF selection course, regardless of sex. The machine is designed to hammer you with self-doubt and discouragement. As an Australian SF selection instructor put it, it's designed to make you feel like the worst soldier in the world. The only feedback you get will be negative if you get any feedback at all, and you'll be working through a mirage designed to strip away every voice saying that you should continue other than your own, with the hope of taking away that voice as well. One of the most important factors in this process is known as the first factor, which is your fundamental relationship with yourself. It's essentially a felt sense of, I am okay with myself, coupled with a clear sense of your purpose, identity, and right to fight for a place in your desired community. When people break emotionally in selection, a weak first factor is often an underlying cause. The first factor is strongly related to one's belief in their sense of belonging within a community or their right to fight for their place there. It's at the root of someone's decision to conclude that either they don't belong there or that other people don't think they belong there and they believe them. So this is an incredibly difficult game to play for anyone. But for female candidates, it's even harder because being a woman in this setting increases stressors in each of the three performance domains. Female SOF candidates are literally playing a hard game on the hardest level. This is for several reasons, which I'll explain next. Women in SOF selection courses will be social pariahs. Many of their fellow candidates will either ignore or be overtly hostile toward them. The social support and camaraderie that plays an important role for candidates in many courses will barely exist for female candidates, and instead, the social environment created by their peers will in many cases be a negative factor in their experience. It will be made clear to them from the very beginning that they do not belong. Even when the peer environment isn't overtly hostile, being a token or outsider in a group is stressful, and this is true whether you're a male or a female. In experiments in which men and women are socially excluded on the basis of sex, they both demonstrate similar stress responses marked by rises in baseline cortisol. So in a male-dominated selection environment, simply being the outlier or token female is enough to alter baseline stress hormone patterns and predispose you to burnout. Next, while there are often gray men in selection courses who can coast through largely unnoticed, there is no such thing as a gray woman. There are no anonymous female SOF candidates. They will be under a microscope constantly and they can never relax. They have to constantly monitor themselves in training settings as well as in social interactions with their peers. Women in a SOF selection course are not only held to the same physical standards as the men around them, they are in many cases held to a higher standard. If you've been through a selection course, you'll know that not every candidate is strong at everything. In fact, very few of them are. A male candidate, for instance, could be an exceptional runner or swimmer, but not great at events requiring maximal strength as long as they suffer through and meet the standard. Or the inverse could be true. They might be big and strong, but weak at endurance challenges and barely survive anything in the water. But a passing performance is still considered passing, and individual variations in physical profiles are accepted. That won't be the case for a female candidate. Females will be viewed with increased scrutiny and a negativity bias that increases the focus on any weakness. Any shortcoming will be highlighted and used to demonstrate why they shouldn't be there. This means they must excel in every domain. They cannot have bad days or areas of weakness. Next, stereotype threat is the fear of confirming a negative group stereotype. Women in selection are actively trying to disprove the stereotype that they are biologically incapable of being there. Female candidates aren't just representing themselves, they're carrying the burden of representing their entire sex. If a male candidate fails, it's on him. If a female candidate fails, it means that women shouldn't be there at all. These factors all have physiological, emotional, and cognitive impacts, which we'll cover next. The signature stress response and autonomic patterns of a successful selection candidate, also known as the warfighter stress response, are directly impaired by these factors. Being low status in a hierarchy, particularly for those actively fighting for status within that group, produces a flatlined dimmer switch stuck in the middle form of a stress response. People in this state will have higher baseline cortisol levels, elevated resting blood pressure, impaired sleep, and will recover more slowly after a stressor. This means that for a female candidate, the social environment in a selection course is acutely more damaging to autonomic function and contributes significantly to burnout. Aside from cognitive impacts of impaired sleep and recovery, these factors also impair working memory capacity, cognitive flexibility, problem solving, and skill performance in tasks like marksmanship or navigation. These factors also significantly negatively impact the first factor and a person's sense of belonging and their right to fight for their place in a chosen community. Selection is meant to be actively discouraging, but for female candidates, this discouragement and exclusion is amplified. It's all set to hard mode. So let's talk about what we can do about it. First, embrace the reality you have, not the one you'd prefer. This is your first step toward understanding and preparing for the challenges that lie ahead. Just like female pioneers in every other field, from medicine to NASA, the first women in SOF will face and have faced incredible and patently unfair barriers. And there's no other way to break through and normalize your right to be there than to do it anyway. You will have to be exceptional. There is no other way. Part of accepting the reality of this challenge means understanding how the game works so that you can address each variable and come into selection as prepared as possible for everything that you'll face. So we'll start with the physical side. First, this means removing the phrase for a girl or for a woman from your vocabulary when it comes to physical performance. There can be no such thing as strong enough for a woman or fast enough for a woman. There is only strong enough and fast enough, period. Your physical preparation cannot be haphazard. You need to approach your objective as a professional athlete. This means working with professionals and addressing every piece of physical performance, including how you manage your sleep, stress, and nutrition in order to build the most robust stress response baseline as possible, knowing that it will be broken down significantly during your course. Part of managing your stress response involves knowing how it works and what factors affect it. Our stress responses are heavily based on our perceptions of predictability and control. So the more deeply you can understand each aspect of selection, how it influences stress physiology, and the autonomic impacts of things like stereotype threat and social exclusion, the better you can mitigate their effects. And the same mental skills like segmenting, compartmentalization, and self-talk management that male candidates rely on become doubly important for female candidates. Stress inoculation training is a way of reinforcing a skill under increasing levels of stress while practicing techniques for managing the impacts of that stress. It can involve things like cognitive behavioral techniques in which you practice recognizing and reframing negative thoughts, using physiological and emotional regulation techniques, and integrating mental skills in increasingly realistic training scenarios. The best athletes tend to have the best coaches and the most of them. Since SOF selection represents a significant emotional challenge, it's important to work with a professional who can give you the tools to handle those challenges. We encourage all of our clients, not just the female ones, to work with a performance psych to round out this part of their preparation. One of the main goals of this is to develop a secure attachment with oneself. This is often formed in childhood, but can also be developed in adulthood through mentoring and supportive relationships. It provides an inner sense of security. Those with secure attachment styles tend to have higher self-esteem, better coping skills, and an internalized belief that they are valued and valuable. This internal working model of being worthy and supported helps regulate stress responses to threats. Next, learn to embrace solitude. Prepare to be at home in the environment you'll be faced with. You'll need a strong internal compass and the ability to be alone without feeling lonely. Learning to manage the stressors of selection involves much more than being good at doing push-ups. It should also include dealing with the negative emotions that you'll be faced with. Practice doing things you're terrible at and feeling like a social outcast. For instance, we have male candidates do things that make them deal with a sense of inferiority, isolation, or shame, as well as those presented by more obvious stressors like public speaking, which can bring up some of the same emotions. Female candidates can practice feeling like an outsider by immersing themselves in other male-dominated environments, which they've already done by joining the military. Working to excel in other settings, like a BJJ training facility, for instance, can also be helpful. More directly, and probably more importantly, working on handling social rejection directly is also useful, such as by taking up a terrible sales job on the side, or again, practicing public speaking in front of a semi-hostile audience. Crucially, this must all be done as a form of deliberate, not naive practice. This means you must be fully aware of the stressors and challenges you'll face and have specific strategies for coping with them and the ability to utilize a feedback loop and understand how well you utilize those skills or those strategies. Doing something hard and then just blindly hoping that you'll get better at it without a clear strategy for how you'll do so is a recipe for burnout and failure. In conclusion, hard doesn't mean impossible. To do something this difficult, you must be well prepared with a clear understanding of the variables involved and how to prepare for them. These barriers will fall, and the pioneers who became the first women in these communities will light the way for generations after them. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or want to discuss anything I've covered, you can reach us at our email here. And if you're interested in our book, I've made a discount code, Valkyrie, which you can use for 20% off at our website.